If you've been working in web development for a while, you may run into these scenarios where you make some changes, do some work, spend a lot of time on something, and then you forget to save your changes, or an older version is what you actually want, and somehow you lose some work and lose a lot of time as a result of it. So today I want to show you some tips in VS Code to prevent that from happening and hopefully save your bacon like it's saved mine many times. So here I am in this HTML file, and first thing I'm going to do if I want to make a new version of it is I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to rename this file index v2, obviously, and so on until you get to v3, v4, and finally v-final, and then v_final, and then underscore, this time for real, final version v7. Now that may have brought up some deeply rooted trauma that some of you that have been in the field for a while have experienced. And if so, I know a great therapist, you can just let me know. But technology has advanced enough that we don't need to rely on that sort of format. We have tools like Git, which has been around for a while, and hopefully you've heard of it. So let's say, for example, I have this file and this is the initial version. I can go in VS Code and I can say, let's just do an initial commit and commit that file. And that's going to take a snapshot of the current state of the file. Now what I can do is say, well, I don't like these lowercase versions, so let's do some uppercase labels and hit save, and my formatter is going to change all of my code. Cool thing about VS Code is it'll actually give us that side-by-side comparison to see what those changes are on each line and each actual change. We can even go into the file and see these little marks where we see our changes, and we can click on them and see those changes and maybe revert them one at a time. So I can undo that change, I can go here, and I can undo this change. Or I can even take this whole file and revert the entire thing. Now that's not really the trick I wanted to show you. I'm going to just kind of assume that most people that are watching these videos already are familiar enough with Git, but I do want to get into a couple other tips here. In almost every single project that I've worked on, I've hit a point where I've committed some code and then actually wanted to go back and change some things about that commit. Maybe I included files that should have been there, or I forgot to include some changes that should have been in there. So up until recently, I've always had to look up how you undo the most recent commit. In fact, I even just had to look it up now, and the command is git reset -- hard head squiggly 1. How could I forget that? Now you may have an excellent memory, so that's going to be fine for you, but I don't, and so I rely on VS Code to actually make that step easier. So in VS Code, you can actually go to the source control tab, and up in this little kebab menu, you can go down to the commit section, and there's an option to undo last commit. And once that's done, we can see that the index.html file is back to being unstaged or untracked, and we have our init commit message in there. Now that's also pretty handy, but for the folks that want to be like power users and rely more on the keyboard, you can actually open up the command palette with on Windows Control-Shift-P. And then you can see that undo last commit is one of the options there. It's my recently used one, but if you don't see it, you can just search for undo and you'll see git : undo last commit, and you can go ahead and hit that. Now I don't have a previous commit, so it's going to complain, but if you did, it would undo it just the same. And even that isn't the coolest part of this video, because there are scenarios where Git is not actually going to help you. Say, for example, that we actually added a git ignore file to our project and we included that index.html file in it. Now it's not actually going to be inside of the version control, which means we can't do that changing versions and reverting and all of that. This is a really common practice with something like env variables. Now, if you accidentally delete this file, you better hope you have a backup. You might be able to find it in the trash bin, but in my case, it actually goes straight to being deleted from disk, so it doesn't exist in the trash bin. So how am I gonna get this back? Well, fortunately, VS Code has this timeline tab, which is really, really cool because it will actually show you changes made to a file in between commits. So you can think of it sort of like atomic version control. And one of the coolest features here is if I create a new file with that same index.html file name, it will actually keep track of all of the changes that I had in that file. So we have when I had the file saved, and then the sort of undo redo that I did, and then file saved again, and then maybe when I delete it from the workspace, and I can actually go ahead and restore the contents of this file, even though it was not in version control. So that timeline feature has saved my butt a bunch of times. And if you watch any of my live streams, you know what I'm talking about. So now you can go out there and be as reckless with your code as you want. If you like this video, let me know. I'd love to hear about if this was able to help save your butt at some point, or if you have some other cool tips that you want to share with the community, let me know in the comments because I would love to see those. So that's all I got for you today. It's time for me to get going.